I'm Susan Palmer of Lead Cat Press. This is my studio update. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, you can scoot down to the description box below and pull up the chapter of the topic that most interests you. I want to remind you that this is a great time to sign up for my mailing list because I'll be releasing April guitar classes very soon. Each month I offer a 4-week beginning, intermediate, and advanced class, and I also teach one free class a month. So if you're kind of interested in getting to know me that way to see if I'm the right teacher for you, that would be great to get on my mailing list so you can learn to see if those are a good fit for you. I also teach private lessons, so that's something that you're welcome to inquire about as well. And getting you on that mailing list will always keep you up to date with everything. So here's what we're covering in today's session. For the technique, I give you a minimal movement exercise. For the reading, I play the last piece in Classical Studies for Pick-Style Guitar, which is a book that I recommend for my students. I'll drop the link below. For the chords and grooves, I go over an exercise for helping you learn tricky chords. That's something that always comes up for students, no matter how long you've been playing. There's always a new chord you got to tackle. So hopefully these tips will be helpful. For the scales and soloing, I am adding chords to an arpeggio. So this is a exercise that will help you if you're playing jazz and you want to learn how to put some chords into your solos. So it's a great finger twister exercise for everybody, but it's definitely great for the jazz guitar players. For the theory, I offer you a little lick that is using a tritone substitution. And I also go over how to find altered chords, or at least dominant 7 flat 5 chords, in 2 shapes on the guitar. So those are kind of must-know things, again, for the jazzers. For the tunes, changing genres here, I played a tune from a country music book that I really like and recommend. I'll drop the link below. I'm sure you know it. It's called I Walk the Line. And for the pro tip, I give you a strategy for dealing with performance anxiety. So I look forward to sharing all this stuff with you. Thanks again for tuning in and sharing this. And don't forget to sign up on my mailing list for April guitar classes. I think it's important to practice minimal movement. That's the idea of keeping your fingers really close to the fretboard and almost making it look like you're not even moving when you're playing. Now, it doesn't mean that a guitarist is a bad guitar player if their fingers do flail around a lot, but I think it's something that is helpful for us all to practice. I think being aware of where your hands are and your fingers are is vital to helping you pull out the sounds that you want to express. So a simple exercise is just the major scale pattern. I'm using an E string root. I'm playing in the key of A. And the idea is just that, I'm trying to play this scale, barely moving my hand, barely moving my fingers. I'm keeping my hand relaxed. I'm still breathing. I'm doing all of those good things, but I'm trying to keep my fingers really close to that fretboard so that it almost doesn't look like they're moving. And that just brings consciousness to your fingers, again, so that you can determine how you want to be playing those notes. When beginning guitar players are first starting out, they usually start by learning some open chords. And I often teach 2-finger chords to begin with because those are just easier fingers to maneuver around the fretboard. I also have a series of exercises I call the chord changing exercises that teach students how to change from one chord to the next clearly and smoothly and in time. And it requires a metronome. So all of those exercises are on page 128 in the Guitar Lesson Companion Volume 1. And it really follows this one principle, which is that in order to play a chord change quickly, you first need to play it really slow. In other words, your fingers need to learn the way of, the movement between those two chords. But this week I had a student who had played those open chords forever, and he was learning some new chords and was kind of hung up on the transitions between those two. And so I want to go over an exercise that might help with that. Of course, I directed him to page 128 because those exercises work really well. Mostly what I want you to come up with is a way to practice new chords so that you have a system for learning them. And so here's another system if you're learning, bar chords, or in this case, I'm going to do a dominant 7th chord with an E string root. And this voicing here, I'm playing an A7, and I'm using all my fingertips here. This is kind of a jazzier version of this chord. And I just say that because, one, it was the one that I learned in jazz camp by some great jazz guitar players. They told me, don't play this. They wanted me to play it this way. And the reasons that they gave me for that are that we don't have any duplicated notes when we play it like this. And it also cuts out this kind of muddiness that you sometimes get when you play this full bar chord shape there. It's got that low 5th in there. It's really power chord-like, and it's great, and it's useful for a lot of things. But for a lot of jazz comping, this one is a better way to go. So anyways, this was a challenging chord for my student to play. And here's the exercise that I shared with him to help him develop that chord. I start off just by playing that chord, making sure that all the notes are really nice and clear, letting that ring out. And then you just release your grip. You're not taking your fingers off the fretboard, you're just releasing your grip. And then again, you press down on those strings and play that chord again. And you want to do that, 5-10 times, just like that. I'm not even taking my fingers off the guitar. And then from there, if that feels comfortable, then you're going to start to move up just a few millimeters, the smallest amount possible, and then come back and play the chord. So you can see I'm barely moving here. I'm just barely taking my fingers off the string, and then I play it again. And then after, 10 or 20 times of that, then start moving your fingers a little bit higher off the fretboard. And so now we're getting somewhere. And you're going to be relying on those little grooves that hopefully formed in your fingers because you've done, the previous sets here. So your fingers kind of have a guide to fall back in line with that. And then it's just a matter of, coming up off the strings further and further each time. And I call this the finger dance exercise because, it kind of looks like your fingers are dancing. They kind of jump up every so often. And by doing that, by changing from the chord to nothing back to the chord, your fingers get a good workout. So you want to practice that for a little while. And if you're still having a hard time with that chord, the next step would be to take that same chord shape and just move it around the fretboard. So I'm just going up chromatically and back chromatically. It doesn't really matter what you do. You just want to keep playing this chord shape. And so what's happening by practicing it that way is I'm picking my fingers up slightly, moving them up a fret or moving them around and then coming down. Your fingers are getting used to coming down on the strings exactly together. And that's really what we're looking for. That's what the previous exercise kind of built on a little bit as well. From there, what you could try is just, skipping some frets. Maybe go up a minor third. So here I went up from A to C to B flat to A. Sounds kind of like a cool jam right there. So and from there, maybe that sparks a song idea for you, and then you're really going to be practicing and playing that. From that exercise, a nice chord to transition back and forth from with this dominant 7 chord is a D minor shape, again with this jazzier version that leaves out that extra 5th in there and gives you less of a muddy sound. So the beauty of this shape paired with this shape is that they're very similar. They're just moved down one string set. So practicing those back and forth, that would be a great step to improve your chord transitions with that chord. And then you might want to try, the 2-5 chord progression. So here I'm going from E minor to A7. So there's a little bit of a jump there. And that's a chord progression that's found in a lot of tunes. Satin Doll would be a tune that has that. It starts off with D minor to G7, and then we have the E minor to A7. So that'd be a good tune to work on with those two chord transitions. So I hope that helps give you some ideas to create your own changing chord exercises or learning a new chord exercise that you can take with you, because trust me, you will hopefully be learning new chord shapes your entire guitar playing journey. I want to share with you a cool way to add some chords into your solos. So I'm playing in the key of C major. The chord shapes that I'm using are from the Cage system. They're also considered drop 2 voicings. I have a C major 7 with a G string root, a D minor 7, again with a G string root, and then that same shape I've moved up to E minor 7, again with that G string root. So what I'm doing here is I'm harmonizing the first 3 notes of that scale. Now the single note line that I'm playing is just an arpeggio. I'm playing B, C, E, G. So those are the notes that make up that first chord, C major 7. So B is the major 7th, C is the root, E is the 3rd, G is the 5th. And then when I finish that phrase, I'm going to hit that C major 7 chord. So I have that nice melody note, that major 7 right on top. So I have B, C, E, G, C major 7. Then I'm going to follow a similar structure for the other 2 chords. I'm going to play C sharp, D, F, A, and then I'm going to play that D minor 7 chord with the C on top there. So again. And then for the third one, the pattern's exactly the same, but if you're a student of mine, you know that I want you to know those names of the notes as well. So I have D sharp, E, G, B, and then that E minor 7 chord with the D on top. I want to share this really cool lick idea that you can use over a C7 altered chord. What I'm playing here is a C triad, a C major triad, so I have the notes C, E, G, and a G flat triad. So I have G flat, B flat, and D flat. And I'm just going back and forth between those as I move up the neck. So I start off C, E, G, G flat, B flat, D flat, C, E, G, G flat, B flat, D flat. Those 2 triads are a tritone away, so this is considered a tritone sub kind of a deal. And it works great over a C7 altered chord or a C7 flat 5 chord. And I want to share with you how to find those flat 5 chords, those dominant 7 flat 5s. So let's go back to this E string root C7 chord, and I'm playing kind of the jazzier version of that. So I've got the notes C, B flat, E, and G. My 5th in the key of C is G, so that note G is on the B string there, so I need to lower my 3rd finger by a half step. I can't do that with my 3rd finger, so I'm going to rearrange my fingers on the fretboard here so that I can grab that G flat. Now I have a G flat on the B string here and a C7 flat 5 chord. If I wanted to do this with an A string root, here's my A string root C7 chord, and the notes are C, G, B flat, and E. So G is under my 3rd finger on the D string, so I just want to lower that by a half step, so I'm going to use my 2nd finger to play that G flat, and the other notes stay the same. I have to be careful not to hit that high E string because that is a G natural, so I have to just hit those interior 4 strings on that one. So now you've got a lick that you can play over a C7 altered or C7 flat 5, and you've got those chord shapes and you know how to find those flat 5 chords. This week I want to talk about performance anxiety, and I really believe that performance anxiety begins when you're in the practice room, and so that's the perfect place to address it and to practice overcoming it. So I have a little routine that I do every time I pick up my guitar, whether it's to perform or to practice. And that routine locks me into a set of behaviors that tells my nervous system, hey, chill out, and it's time to focus, and we're gonna have a good time. So what I like to do is I take a deep breath in, I hold that, and I exhale for a lengthier amount of time than I was inhaling. And there's something, concrete about that actually relaxes your nervous system. So you inhale slowly, but you exhale a little more slowly. The next thing that I like to do is just look down and admire my guitar. And I think my guitar is so cool. Whatever guitar I'm playing, I'm just fascinated with the way the strings look and the frets and the tuners. And, I just think it's a really cool instrument. And by taking that moment to appreciate my guitar, it brings out the love that I have for the instrument, for music, and it just really changes my mindset. It gets me really focused on the cool things that I want to be able to express.